We are live. Hey guys, we're actually finally live. All the being down with the sickness is hopefully gone for good. You go toss on here that we're live now.
Perfect.
Not live. Come on, autocorrect. You can do better than that. Autocorrect's trying to kill me now. Oh, goodness gracious. Well, I hope you guys have had a couple of better weeks than I have, because it has been insane. And now my husband's sick, so it's just been, I don't see it letting up anytime soon. Well, guys, you know the drill. If you have any questions, I guess Facebook is not going to work right now, so let me just put it in. If you have any questions, toss them in the comments below. If for some reason, YouTube is being mean to you and will not allow you to do that, you can post it on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever. Just make sure you tag us, and I will find your question. All right, so of course we are here today with the author of this amazing trilogy, which as now that I have finished this, I'm kind of glad that the series ends. You get a good ending and everything. It was great. Tears of sadness, tears of happiness. It's good, but it's kind of still slightly open. I mean, of course you'd have to do something else because, you know, of certain things are, without giving spoilers, are not around anymore. I guess I'll say that. So, I mean, it'd still be kind of interesting to see what you could do with it.
Yeah, there's just for my own interest, I did write a short story. Maybe I'll throw it out sometime on my website. Just to answer Abby's question, Mia does not do great following the events of Salvation. So without giving anything away, yeah, the short story I wrote has to do with sometime in the future, Cage and Kenzie finding Mia and getting her help with something, and she's not in a great state when they find her.
Ooh. I could see it kind of turning into maybe like a Born Identity type thing where they're trying to take down all the different corporations. You know, I think that would be kind of interesting.
For sure.
That'd be kind of cool. All right, so first off, how do you pronounce your name?
My name is Caryn Lix.
Caryn. Okay, so it's just an interesting way to spell Caryn.
It's just an interesting way to spell Caryn that my parents decided to stick me with. So
I love it. It's so neat, though.
It keeps me from being a Karen with a K, which is not something you want to be right now. So there you go.
Right. Okay, so of course, so introduce yourself. Let us know, like, you know, how you decided to become a publisher, how you came up with a story.
For sure. So my name's Caryn Lix. I'm talking to you from Canada, and as I was saying to Jessica, I'm about an hour north of the Montana border. So it's been a long journey for me to publication, but I started writing when I was about 14, and I've just always loved writing. So Sanctuary was my third completed novel. And my first one, I sent out to some agents and didn't get any bites. My second one got lots and lots of positive feedback, but nobody actually signing it. Sanctuary was signed fairly quickly with my amazing agent, Katie, who read it and called me back within 24 hours, which is very, very rare in the publishing world. So that was awesome. And yeah, that's kind of just came together from there, but it took a long time to get to that stage of, you know, having an agent and the publication and all that.
Wow. Well, I have to say that I read the first one as an EARC and I could not put it down. So I think I read that. I think it just had me clocked for Containment, that I had done it in just over 5 hours or something. So for the other one, I think it was at like 4 hours. I did like almost 100 pages an hour. So
impressive.
It is so good. I mean, once you start it, you're not going to put it down.
Thank you so much.
And all these endings, oh my goodness. I remember I was looking through my old review and I'm like, oh man, it's like none of this has changed. You know, it's the same, reading it once or twice or however many times, that it's just like you get towards the end of this book and you're like, well, you already know it's a series. So like, how is she going to end this to torture you? and then it's just like a stake to the heart and you're dying until you have the next one.
I've never loved cliffhanger endings. Like, I've always thought that the events of the book should be wrapped up at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's so hard with the second book in a series. I have a lot more sympathy now. When I first read the second Hunger Games book, I was so mad about the ending. But I have a lot more sympathy now because it's really hard to end a second book in a way that isn't a cliffhanger.
Right. I think you did well because they're kind of they're cliffhangers, but it's not so much of a cliffhanger that that if you had to wait a while for the next book to come out, you're not going to completely die, but you're more in lines of like, okay, who's alive, who's dead, what's going to happen, more towards oh these people are just gone.
For sure.
Let's see. We have our first writing question. How do you pronounce the main characters' names?
So the main characters, let's see. We've got Kenzie, Cage, Rune. I think they're all pretty self-explanatory. Alexi. Someone asked about Mia. Mm-hmm. So that's Mia. That's the only one that might be a little confusing. I think the rest are pretty straightforward. Reed, Jasper. Going through in my head, I'm like, who is there? If there's any I missed and you don't know how to pronounce their names, throw them into the chat and I'll tell you.
It's so hard. It's nice when names are easy.
Yeah.
Let's see. This is from a question from Beyond the Pages. Thank you for joining. What advice do you have for someone who wants to be published professionally?
Honestly, I guess my twofold advice is to find people who will give you honest advice about your writing and listen to those people, because so much of what I write is because I have awesome critique partners, and if I didn't have them, there would be a lot of garbage in my books. But there are people who are not afraid to say to me, listen, you've said this word 18 times in 12 pages, get it together. Or, this makes no sense. So get good advice and listen to it. And the other one is just not give up. And I know that's kind of cliched at this point, but I have a spreadsheet with like 70 some rejections that I received on my agent applications before I signed with Katie and Liza Dawson Associates. So it's really easy to hit a point where you're like, this is a waste of my time. Why am I bothering? Every rejection hits you and crushes you. But it just takes one yes, they always say, and it's true. So I guess you kind of have to, there was a point where I had to say, okay, this book isn't getting bites. It's time to move on to something new. So you have to be willing to let things go, but you also have to know when to not give up. So that's kind of conflicting advice, I know, but just believe in yourself and believe in your writing and keep going if it's what you really want.
That's good advice. I know another author that I had on here gave the advice of when you're writing a book, if you get stuck, go back and ask yourself, why should the readers care? And if you don't have an answer for that, pull it out.
There's a famous quote, I think it's from Mark Twain, and I don't remember the exact wording, but it's the equivalent of, if you don't know what to write, have someone enter the room with a gun. And as someone who writes science fiction action, that's kind of what I do. I'm like, if I don't know what to write, then I assume things are getting boring and it's time to like have something happen.
Right. I do that for like, there's been a few books that I like DNF, and it's like, you get to a point where like, okay, I don't care if somebody came in the room and shot everybody, I'm done.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So characters. Oh my goodness. I loved how you started Sanctuary, because all of the book is in Kenzie's point of view, the whole entire series. And, she's just this corporate mind. She knows that these prisoners are bad news. She wants to impress the company and the corporation and her mother and her father and stuff. How did you come about creating her as a character?
Kenzie started kind of almost just as an image of a girl, standing at a space station window looking down at Earth. And from there, I kind of became interested in, who is this person and what's she doing up there? And just sort of started exploring it from there. I think a lot of like the social commentary in the book is not intentional, but obviously comes through pretty strongly. So I think a lot of Kenzie's questions are questions I've had too about, what are we being told and how accurate is it? And how do we know who's telling us the truth? And, who do we listen to? So I think a lot of Kenzie's characteristics came kind of organically out of questions of my own in this kind of weird social media world we live in.
Nice. So then, what about for your other characters like Cage and Rune? How did they come to be?
So the most interesting, I think, character origins are probably Mia and Alexis, because I was playing in a Pathfinder game at the time, which is like Dungeons and Dragons, and I was playing a elf that everybody hated. They just despised her, and I was like under constant pressure to like get this character out of the game. We hate her so much. Her name was Riska, and she was a thief, and she was dating my husband's character, who was this muscle-bound, stomping around kind of lunkhead. And Mia and Alexi came out of those two characters because I was like, fine, if nobody likes my elf, I'll put her in a book. And I think my extreme affection for those two characters comes across pretty strongly. Obviously, they grew and developed and became their own people. They started as those sort of roleplay characters, but they're pretty, like my husband reads and he's like, well, this Alexi's different from, this character I played in all these ways. And I'm like, yeah, they're not the same people anymore, but they started there. The other characters, I'm a real pantser when it comes to writing. So I did come up with some loose outlines for them, but a lot of times I just kind of let the characters develop as I write. That's the fun part for me a lot of the times too, is just writing and seeing where people are going to go and who they're going to become. I think it's kind of like getting to know someone, right? So Cage and Rune and the other characters just kind of came into being as I wrote. And I mean, the downside with that is that then my editors get the books and they're like, the characters are really flat in the first 5 chapters. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I didn't know who they were. So I always have to go back and rewrite to put in the new perspective now that I actually know who these people are.
So, of course, this series deals with a lot of sci-fi elements and stuff because it's science fiction. How much research did you have to do to create all of the tech and all of their powers and everything?
Some, but a lot of it is probably, I'm sure if a physicist read the book, they would be like, no. But that's why I don't write hard sci-fi. There's a lot of questions. If you start asking me too many technical questions about how things work, I'm going to go, it just, a wizard did it. But of course, definitely things like, just like, what is the climate on Mars, or when can you see the moon on Mars, things like that. I definitely would research as I was writing. I research by the seat of my pants too. So as I'm writing, if I'm suddenly like, what would this be like? Then I stop and I look that up, like I don't do a ton of research ahead of time and have a bunch of notes beside me. But I definitely, whenever I hit a point where I'm like, does that work that way? Then I'll stop and look it up. So thank God for the internet is all I can say to that.
Let's see. The next question, we have a write-in. The final book was so awesome. Thank you for writing these wonderful characters. I definitely agree with that one. Where did you get the idea for the world you built in the series?
I guess a lot of it's sort of based on, as I've said, Sanctuary was kind of an homage to a lot of the things that I love and that scare me. So, the Aliens movies and Resident Evil or Silent Hill, or just like survival horror video games and all of those things, the X-Men, all those things that I really love or that scared me or affected me on some level. And I think the whole idea of like corporate power is something I find really frightening. Even if you look at, how education is coming to be corporately sponsored, which is a very frightening prospect, and just this idea of like, how much control do you have if you're a corporation that's in charge of people's education? And from there, how do you adjust to that, and how far can that power go? So that's when I was thinking about that, and then I started thinking about, what if it actually went to the point where, they say that some of the highest growth national capitals actually belongs to corporations now, not to countries. And so I thought, well, then wouldn't it make more sense to have your loyalty be to that corporation? Like, aren't they going to be better positioned to fund things like healthcare and stuff? And that's kind of where it came out of, right? So this idea that citizenship would switch to corporations instead of to nationalities and things like that was kind of the first place I landed on. And then I just wanted superpowers. So, there was the deep side, and then there was okay, how can we put superpowers in here?
Hey, that works. I actually, I think I remember that for my review for Sanctuary, I tossed in, like, it's like aliens in there.
Yeah, that was one of the comp titles.
So also that I kind of noticed that, like, Sanctuary had some very gory parts to it, and then so, like, what was it? Containment. See, I'm forgetting the titles already. Containment had just like a few, like, actually like just like one or two spots of goriness. Why did you like take those down?
There was no real reason, honestly. It was just the nature of the stories. Like, Sanctuary was so claustrophobic and was so focused on, the aliens and that claustrophobia.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Containment and then Salvation, like, each book branched out a bit more, right? So with Containment, you lost some of that claustrophobic stalking feel. Okay. And less of the book was about, like, the aliens don't even show up until quite far into the book.
Right.
So there was honestly just, like, I'm not afraid of gore. I'm not afraid of violence. But of course, if I'm going to include it, it's going to be for a purpose, not just for shock value. So in Sanctuary, I felt like it was really essential to the story. Like, it had to be there. But in Containment, I mean, there just wasn't as much need for it. Of course, I would say that the one scene in Containment that is gory is a lot of gore. It's enough to make up maybe for, because Sanctuary, I think it's more, there's lots of instances of it, but it's just one person or one, whereas in Containment, it's all at once, just like,
it's just going to splatter you all at once.
Pretty much, yeah.
But now that you're saying this, it kind of makes more sense, because it's, Sanctuary, they're on Sanctuary, which is a small, prison base. And then in Containment, they go to an entire space station. And then the last one, of course, they're on like a planet. So that kind of, the world gets bigger and bigger. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Makes so much sense now.
And that was somewhat intentional in terms of Kenzie's world is expanding through all of this too, from her narrow perspective as this prison guard. As her physical world opens up, so does her mental world.
So do you think that now that they've dealt with everything, and of course we know the ending of Salvation without letting anybody else know, because no spoilers, will their powers like still continue to mature and grow, or are they like done?
I think because a lot of their powers were, I don't think it's a huge spoiler to say that their growth and their powers was mostly connected to the aliens. Provided they don't have any more contact with those creatures, their powers will probably fix in place where they are.
Okay. It's like nobody's gonna wake up with anything else going on.
Probably not, assuming the creatures are gone.
Let's see. Okay, how did you come up with the words? I'm not going to attempt to pronounce them. For the aliens, the two words that we know for the aliens.
Zemdyet and Karok. Yeah. I don't even want to tell you. It's so embarrassing. Keyboard smashing. That's honestly what I did. I was like, flomp. And then I'm like, okay, what's on the screen and how do I make it into a word? And if I didn't like it, then I did it again. So, I would wind up with some bizarre assortment of letters, and then I'd be like, okay, so how do I make that into a word? Nope, don't like that. Let's try it again.
Add a vowel in there somewhere.
Yeah, that would be good.
Hey, that makes a lot of that. That's actually pretty helpful because, I mean, if you're going to do fantasy or sci-fi where you have to come up with your own names for worlds and stuff, instead of trying to take a couple of words and like mash them together, that just makes it simpler.
For sure.
You come up with some pretty interesting words that way. So
Absolutely.
do you know like how many times you had to do that to come up with those two
Not
words?
too many, because once I have some letters in front of me, then I find it pretty easy to just be like, okay, what sounds good? How can I use these letters? Like
Right.
the final word might not bear much resemblance to what I mashed out.
Uh-huh.
Maybe once or twice, depending on what it was. And then sometimes too, I'll finish the book and I'll be like, that was a stupid name. And I'll go back and do a search and find. Control F is my best friend when I'm writing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That
It
definitely.
also helps me find all those words that I know I overuse. So I don't worry about that when I'm writing, but then when I go back through, I'm like, okay, Control F, and I can't think of an example at the moment, but I have a list of words that I know I overuse. So I'll do a search and replace for those.
Oh goodness. See, on a personal level, how do you juggle being a new mom with writing your next project, which I'm hoping you're planning?
Very badly. Very, very
Do you
badly.
have a next project? I'm guessing you
I
do.
do. Yeah, I actually have a completed novel. Simon and Schuster was not interested in publishing it, so we're going to be looking for another publisher for it. Um, my agent gave me a long list of things she'd like me to go through and fix up, and I started off with lots and lots of steam, and then about a month ago I got distracted by the baby and it being summer and just everything going on in the world, and I have not done much on it since. But I'm hoping that with school starting again, summer is always a bit of a I lose my schedule completely in summer, and I'm very schedule dependent. So I think once school starts again and I'm back in the groove of doing work, then it'll be easier. She's going to sleep she's a really good sleeper. So she's going to sleep at like 6 p.m. these days. And my husband takes the night shift with her because he's a night owl. So that should give me the evening to get back on track. And
How old is
right
she
now,
now?
she will be 5 months on Tuesday.
Oh,
Yeah,
I miss babies.
she's wonderful. We're just so happy. And I've mentioned she's adopted. So we had such a long wait for her. We waited 5 years for her. And we had decided that if we had not had an adoption come through this August, we were going to remove ourselves from the list just because we're starting to get a little bit older. And yeah. So, short version of the story is we've had a really difficult year in terms of adoptions, like lots of consultations that didn't pan out. And we
Yeah.
were actually contacted. It was March 25th at 8 p.m. And we were contacted and told, sorry, this adoption you were up for didn't work out. And at 8:10, my phone rang, and it was my social worker. And I thought she was calling to say, hang in there. Nope, she was calling and she was like, we have a baby for you. She's just been born, and the birth mother has selected you. And can you be in Calgary by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning? So, yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
It was very crazy, but yeah, we're just so happy. She's wonderful.
I miss babies. Like take all the photos and videos that you possibly can because
We have
once
so
you get
many.
older, like mine, my youngest is getting ready to turn 10 this year and my oldest just turned
Wow.
16. The other one just turned 16 this year, and it's like I'll have like the memories pop up on Facebook, and like one did this morning when the youngest one was like 3, and I'm like, oh, like I miss all that because they're always learning new things.
I know. Even now, looking back at her newborn
Yeah.
pictures, I'm like, my husband and I were in Walmart the other day and I picked up a newborn outfit and I'm like, she was wearing this like 4 months ago.
So yeah, it's like take all the videos you possibly can because
Absolutely.
don't want to miss it, and you always want to remember. See. So is your new project, is it science fiction or?
Yes. So I actually have 2 books that I'm kind of playing with right now. One is the book that I was trying to get published before Sanctuary, which is actually middle grade fantasy. And the other one is a science fiction story set in Tokyo.
Oh, cool. Do we get more aliens or not so much?
There are aliens involved. Yes.
It's like, how do I say this without spoilers or anything else?
Well, and I'm not sure what it'll look like if it actually gets published either, because it has to go through. So I don't want to give a bunch of promises that then turn out to be
what's going to happen. See, if you could have a superpower, which would it be?
You know what? I'm asked that question every time I do an interview, and I don't think I've ever given the same answer twice, because there's so many cool superpowers. Who can decide, right? Right now, I would really like the power to teleport. I would just like to be able to go anywhere. And I think I came to that conclusion somewhere in the middle of our 16-hour flight from Hong Kong to Calgary last year. I was like, man, teleportation would be great.
It would definitely come in handy. You'd save a lot of gas,
Right?
Don't have to go through long lines. None of that.
Absolutely. Stuff. No security checks. Just snap your fingers. And...
See, mine never changes. I always, like, every time anybody ever asks me that, which, I think it's really kind of interesting that question comes up a lot more than you think it would.
I think it makes sense given what I read about, everybody's like, okay, so what would you like superpowers? What do you want your power to be?
Right.
And then depending on my mood, I have a different answer. That was actually, it's funny because my first date with my husband, he asked me that question.
That's funny.
So, many years before Sanctuary.
That's cool. Mine is always to control water because everything has water in it. So in fact, you can control everything. And that just makes me look so old because that's from like the Airbender days.
Oh no, that's not old.
Avatar and the Airbender. It's like,
I refuse to accept that is old.
I feel so old.
Oh, tell me about it.
How did you feel when you found out your book was nominated for a MYRCA award last year?
That was really cool. I was really excited. That's a Manitoba-based award. And I love any awards that are based on readers. Like when it's based on readers, it just feels so genuine. So I was so honored and excited by that. And the same thing with this year, Sanctuary is nominated for a Sakura Medal, which is an award given by international schools in Japan and selected by students. So like I said, anything that comes from readers is just so close to my heart because that's who I want to connect with. Like the reviewers and stuff like that. I mean, that's nice and stuff, but when you get a positive review from someone who's an actual reader and not like a professional reviewer, that just means so much more to me.
Right. I think Sanctuary won our end of the year award for science fiction when it first came out.
That's awesome.
Let's see. Why did you choose to write the book solely from Kenzie's point of view and in first person?
I want to give you a deep and profound answer to that, but I don't have one. Sometimes it's just, it just is the way the book wants to be written, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's funny because my newest book is actually in third person. And so I wrote that one in quite a short time, and then I had to go back and do the edits for Salvation. And it was so strange to get my head to switch from third person back to first person. Like it took me I had to re-edit that first chapter 3 or 4 times just because I kept switching to third person. It's just the way the book wanted to be written. It's just, I started it in first person and didn't really know where I was going with it, as I do, and that's how it wound up being.
I think it worked out because, especially for Sanctuary, because I think if it would have been in like even dual perspective between her and maybe Cage, it would have, it would have given you a lot of spoilers for what was actually going on and stuff.
Well, that's the thing. Like, so much of it is about Kenzie's journey and like Kenzie overcoming these ideas and prejudices. And I think it's more powerful when you are experiencing that with her, as opposed to third person being outside of her or having a dual perspective where it kind of interrupts Kenzie's journey.
Right. I think it worked out a lot better doing it just from her point of view versus, numerous. And
I mean, the short answer is it just felt right.
Right. Abby says Airbender is timeless. Yes, it is.
Abby is correct.
And I heard that they're doing a new live action of it through Netflix, so that's going to be interesting. I get so scared when people say they're going to try and do, my brain is completely fried. But like movies and stuff from books, because you always that something's going to change, but it's just
and the original creators have walked away from the project, which is not great.
No, and that never is.
But as my husband pointed out, the Stargate creators walked away from Stargate, and that turned out to be a great show. So we'll give it a chance. We'll see.
Oh, I didn't know that, man. See, that just, I don't know, that kind of scares me, but then kind of doesn't.
It's not great.
Right.
It's not what I was hoping to hear, but I'm not going to let it totally sour me.
It's like everybody should that's taken books and stuff and turning them into movies and TV series to take one from Outlander. They work hand in hand with the author, and look how beautiful it has turned out. It has been like so amazing. It's like that's what that should be your goal right there.
I always think of that second Hunger Games movie.
Mm-hmm.
I always feel like if you're going to do a movie from a book, that's how you do it. Like everything in that movie was exactly how I pictured it reading the book.
Mm-hmm. I think they did a pretty good job with those, especially with, seeing Katniss's mentality of, her breaking down and everything. I think they did a good job.
Yeah, they're great movies, but that second one, there's just everything about it was perfect. Like it was cast perfectly. It was the arena was set up. I just really remember being so impressed with that.
Right. And it's so hard because, especially with like CGI and things of doing things. It's getting better though. So
for sure.
Our technology's catching up. I'm hoping these get picked up because that would be really cool to be on the big screen. And we need more horror movies and stuff.
I agree. And good ones.
Yeah.
Not like low budget. And I shouldn't say it. My husband loves low budget horror movies, but I prefer the slicker ones.
Well, because this is like close to Aliens and stuff, I think they could do, some director out there could do something with it, because it's like Aliens for the YA community. Yeah. We don't have a lot of YA horror.
No.
Need it. Let's see. Beyond the Pages asked, have you ever participated in Nanowrimo? I can never pronounce anything. Oh my goodness.
I love Nanowrimo. It is sometimes the only thing that gets me writing. So Sanctuary was started as a Nanowrimo project.
Oh, wow.
And so was my most recent book. I never finished them in November, but I usually finish them pretty quick. But then again, I think Nanowrimo is assuming a 50,000 word novel, and mine usually end up being closer to 80. So that would be a lot to do in a month. I usually have them done, though, by mid-January or so, because that's just how I work. I work in spurts, and then I take huge breaks. So, I've heard the advice that if you want to be a writer, you have to write every day. I definitely don't write every day. I write massive amounts for every day for months, and then I'm like, I hate writing. I don't want to do it for 3 months. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I have an idea. So, yeah, but I find it really motivating and really helpful.
Well, that makes me feel better because like I've got a few books that I've started and stuff, one that's almost done, and it's like with reading and a job and kids and stuff, I'll sit down and I'm like, hey, you know what? Let's add some more to the story, and I'll read back through everything that I read and then just start type, and I'll do like 10 or 20,000 words, and then I won't touch it for like 5 or 6 months. It's like
it just needs to get written. If you come back to it, I think the reason people give that advice is because for lots of people, if they stop writing, they never pick it up again.
Right.
And I do find that about myself with an individual project, because I tend to walk away at a hard part and then develop a mental block. So I don't let myself do that. I push through the hard part. And if I walk away at a good part so that I want to come back. But yeah, then like once a project's done, I don't know, it's like finishing the project exhausts me, and I don't want to do any more projects for a little while. And I think that's okay. It's just time to recharge, right?
Mm-hmm. So how does it feel to have a complete trilogy out there in the world?
It's really neat. It was a little anticlimactic because of our good friend COVID. It was kind of sad. I went to the bookstore and they were like, oh no, we didn't order your book. And they've been super supportive of me. They've given me like end caps and stuff. And they were like, yeah, you know, just with COVID, nobody's shopping, so we didn't even order physical copies. And you know, it was the first time I actually held the book in my hands was my mother-in-law ordered a copy off Amazon because the warehouses are all shut down, so I didn't even get my author copies yet.
Right. Yeah, Amazon, when I went to order it, because I went to go to Books A Million, and they're like, no, we don't have any. And I'm like, seriously? Because I was just going to walk in the door on the 4th, pick up the Midnight Sun, and pick up Salvation, pay for it, and walk out the door. And they're like, oh, no, we don't have it. And I'm like, I ended up getting it from Walmart.
I know, it's strange. So yeah, it was a bit weird, but seeing the three of them together, even when you held them up, was really sweet. And it was awfully nice because I didn't know for sure when Containment came out if Salvation would go ahead. And I was really worried about that because I didn't want to, you know, it does end on a cliffhanger and I didn't want to leave people hanging. So it was really a blessing to be able to finish the series and finish the story.
That would have been crazy if the last one wouldn't have come out. I mean, I guess you could have, like, I don't know, like put out a little short story like, oh, hey, they got to they found each other. They found a city. They lived happily ever. Done.
Yeah, I guess.
They're just stranded there forever now. But they're okay.
Eternal camping.
Right. See, how did you plan your plots and character paths?
I do a little bit of very light planning at the beginning. But to be honest, I had to take my earring off. It was killing me. They're very heavy, but they're really cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did a little bit of light planning at the beginning, which is what I usually do. And then I throw it out the window and just start writing. So I only go back to the plan if I get stuck, really. Like, I'll go all over the place. And then if I hit a point where I'm like, oh, no, I've written myself into a corner, then I'll go back and be like, okay, well, what did I plan to have happen? So I have a better idea of the characters than the plot before I get writing. But to be honest, I don't have a super strong idea of either one. And I've tried planning because it just seems like a better idea. I mean, I would, if my grade 6s were writing stories and were like, yeah, I'm just not going to plan anything, I'd be like, that is a bad idea. You should. So I should practice what I preach. But I don't know.
I've heard both sides, from the plotters to the pantsers, and I've had people be that were pantsers and then they started being plotters, and they're like, it goes so much faster. Then there's people that are like, they couldn't plot if their life depended on it.
Yeah. I like to have some idea of where I'm headed because otherwise I do write myself into corners.
Mm-hmm.
But usually what it is I have 2 or 3 pivotal scenes in mind that I'm writing towards. And everything else that happens just happens.
Did you always know who was going to survive and who was going to die?
Nope. One character who died, I don't want to give it away, I knew really early on. I remember telling my critique partner after Sanctuary that character was not going to survive. And she was very annoyed with me and continually tried to convince me that needed to change. Another major character who died in Salvation, though, I had no idea until about 3/4 of the way through Salvation when I looked at it and realized where things were going and went, there's no way this is going to end well for this person. So, yeah, sometimes I know and sometimes it's a surprise.
So the other one in Sanctuary, was it the one that comes back from the dead?
That one is totally, I knew that character was going to die and come back.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm talking about the 2 characters. I guess I'm telling you that. There's 2 very major characters who die in Salvation. And one of them, like I said, I knew from the beginning, well, from the time I finished Sanctuary, I knew that character was going to have to die. And I was very upset about it because I really liked that character. The other one, I didn't plan on dying, but like I said, as the story progressed, it just became clear that was how things were going to have to go.
Right. Like, sorry, bub, you're gone. See, how long did it take you to write Sanctuary aside from editing?
Pretty quick, because like I said, I work in spurts. I think I started it in November as a national novel project, and I think I finished it around Christmas time.
Oh, wow.
So about 2 months. But then I did hardcore editing for quite some time afterwards.
Wow. How long did it take you to edit?
I did a round of edits just on my own. That was about 3 months, like with my critique partners. And then once my agent accepted it, I did a round of edits with her. And then once my publisher accepted it, I did a round of edits with my editor as well.
Oh, wow. And how long does it usually take you to edit?
Again, not too long because of the spurts thing, right? So once I have notes from somebody, I usually, now this is an exception, the book I'm working on right now, because like I said, I don't know, I got distracted by baby and I got frustrated with just the world and took a break, which is not something I usually do. Usually I'm like, okay, let's plow through this. I like being in kind of a zone, and I like to working quickly because that way I don't forget things that have happened earlier.
Right.
You know, it's fresh in your mind, and I find sometimes those things trigger other things and, you know, remind you of things that you need to. So I like working quite quickly, but yeah.
So I will note one thing that just kind of popped in my head about, I'm constantly saying that people who write series are crazy because like I would never be able to keep anything straight. So like what you did with like having them in different locations works perfectly to get out of that. There is no way that you can like go around the corner like, wait a second, that wasn't there. That was down the other hallway. So
yeah, I did do like a little sketch of Sanctuary when I was first working on it for exactly that reason.
I kind of wish
I was
like added like a map in the book of Sanctuary. That would have been so cool.
Would have been neat, yeah.
Because then in Containment it could have been Obsidian and then the planet in the last one. That would have been so neat.
That would have been cool.
I live for book maps.
Missed opportunities.
So what have you been reading anything? Is there anything you can recommend to us?
Oh yeah, I read obsessively. Right now I am reading The Name of the Star, I think it's called. Pull up my little. I'm reading lots of parenting books if you're interested in that. Yeah, I'm just finishing up with The Name of the Star by Maureen Johnson. I'm really enjoying a lot of her books. I just finished reading Horror Store, which if you're at all a fan of The Evil Dead, I highly recommend it. It's like a weird comedy horror that takes place in a low budget IKEA.
I had that a year ago. I just got, is he's the same one that wrote the, oh, I can't see it. I think it's the Oranges and Vampires or something is on the front of it.
Yeah, I've heard of that one and that.
Yeah, I found that at another used bookstore, and I was like, "Ooh, yes, please!" It looks so cool.
I just have my like library app open, so I'm like, "What have I been reading?" Because I've been reading like crazy this summer. All the books I put on hold came in at the same time. My husband's like, "You always do this," and I'm like, "Well, it's not my fault. They just happen. They happened that way." So, I'm about to read Girl Serpent Thorn. That's next on my list. So,
I have that one. I can actually see that one from here.
Yeah, it just came in the library, so I was like, okay, gonna read that. What else did I? Oh, I Killed Zoe Spanos by Kit Frick. I just finished that one, and it was so good. It's like a contemporary retelling of Rebecca. Really liked that.
Seen that one in print. It has like blue sprayed pages.
Yeah,
it's so pretty.
Yeah, so that was really good. What else did I read recently? I'm skipping over the ones that I did not like so much because I don't like to give negative feedback. I guess those are the big ones I've been reading recently. So I have a whole bunch more on hold too.
Is there anything that's coming out that you can't wait for?
Yeah, I've got a list. I've got to go back to my lists because I get interested in things and then I write them down and then I forget that they exist. Karen McManus's new book is coming out soon, and I really enjoy her stuff. I like mysteries a lot as well as horror, so I'm looking forward to that one a lot. I read a book recently too that was almost prophetic. It was about like a socially distant future because of a virus, where people had to like, you know, public gatherings were illegal, and it was about like this underground music scene. And I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me.
That sounds really familiar.
I wonder if it's in my history. But yeah, so there's a bunch that are on my like radar and stuff. But unfortunately, I'm not very good at remembering titles because once I've written them down, I don't have to remember them, right? So I can put them out of my head for things that are more important.
I don't think I could tell anybody. I think like the last thing I read was this series. And now once I get done, now that I am done, excuse me, I'm done. I'm done. I just sat here and read the last couple of pages. I'll be doing City of Bones and City of Ashes because my online club, we're doing all of the Shadowhunter series, which will be like the 80,000th time I've read those.
Sometimes you just have to reread things. I find that too. Like, I'll have this stack of to-be-reads, and I'm like, I think I'm going to read, Pride and Prejudice for the 50th time.
Well, I love when authors come like back on the show, like one Mara Ruthford or something like that. She wrote the Coral of Pearl and something. A Crown of Coral and Pearl. She's coming back on for Kingdom of Sea and Stone. So it's like that gives me a reason that I can go back and read book 1 again.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't get the chance to reread stuff very often because I've got the load of, getting about 50, 60 books a month to review.
For sure.
So anytime I have like a bona fide reason that I can go read something that I loved like this, I was like, yes. Because otherwise it just sits there and collects dust.
I know.
To touch it, and it's so sad. Right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And again, I am so sorry of having to constantly move this.
No problem.
So crazy.
So I just saw Abby's question pop up, and I just want to answer. It was the first death that was planned. You're
like the first person to actually be able to see those.
You have to click on comments. I bet people leave it in private chat.
Okay, because nobody ever sees any of that stuff. So I was like, whoa, how are you seeing that?
You have to actually click on comments. If you leave it on private chat, it will.
Oh, okay.
I'm kind of like the tech person at school, so I'm in the habit of.
That's me. That's me everywhere. I've been trying to set my girls up for virtual learning, and the school gave my oldest a MacBook Air like what I have, and we were trying to like turn up the volume because none of the videos for her teachers had volume on it. And I'm like, what is going on with this? They locked everything out, and I was like, it's just a complete nightmare. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. Ugh. I'm so glad when hopefully all this COVID stuff gets over with, and
yeah, it would be really nice, wouldn't it?
We can get back to somewhat of normal. See, do you have all the books of your novels?
Just the first one. It's up to Simon & Schuster if they wanted to, and they chose not to for the second two. So, if you would like to record one and call them up, maybe they'll.
Like, here you go. See, I've never liked horror before, but this book might have broken the door wide open for me for that.
Oh, yay.
I think it worked out really well because it's like a light horror, romance, sci-fi, kind of.
It's just things I like.
Yeah, with a hint of coming of age into it, and it just kind of worked all together and blended so well. I mean, like, I'm going to use the P word, which I do not use very often. Like, this series was perfect, just the way
so much.
It was so good.
So good.
And I just love how the colors, especially like the backs, you got like
it's amazing.
The different stars and stuff. It's so pretty.
I was so grateful because, when the second book was being released, they actually had a different cover for it, and I was really disappointed in it. And I talked to my editor about it, and they got this author and got her to, she did them all in that same similar style, and it was just, I was really happy. Like, she's an amazing artist.
So well, because I mean, although it's from like a female perspective, it doesn't have an overabundance of female themes. So I think like guys that are looking for that science fiction feel could also pick this up and be perfectly with it and fall in love with it.
I hope so.
Yeah. So I mean, you can't say that about a lot of YA people come into the store that I work for, because I work at a used bookstore, and they're looking for books for their sons, and I'm just like looking at this like, okay, what am I gonna pick out for these people?
Yeah,
but there's definitely one that if it like, hey, do they like science fiction? Maybe some a little bit of alien gore, goo, and fun things. Here you go.
My male students read it and they like it, but I mean, of course, they have the personal connection, right?
Yeah.
But I have actually found that not all, but most of my biggest fans among my own students tend to be the boys. So, for what it's worth.
Good. That's good because they need more stuff because I know a lot of like there's a lot of middle grade stuff for boys and stuff out there, but not a lot of young adult stuff for the most part. Yeah. All right. So thank you. Oh, let's see. Some reviews I've read felt that Kenzie was too mature for her age. What would you say to people who think that?
Come and talk to me when I was 16. That was me too. I was like, my future is planned and I've got this and I've got this. And I think people underestimate teenagers all the time, honestly. Like, yes, there's hormones raging wild, and yes, you know, there's a lot of emotions to deal with, but people's experiences shape them. And like for myself, I grew up with a severely disabled younger sister, you know, with some financial struggles and with just a lot of things I had to deal with. And that was constantly the comment I got is, oh, you're so mature, you're so responsible.
Right.
And I don't know, like Kenzie is a lot like I was in a lot of ways. And I know even teaching grade 6, I have students who they run the spectrum from, you know, incredibly immature to insanely mature, where I probably have grade 6 students who are more mature than Kenzie. And I think I don't know, I just think it's really a fallacy to say, you know, if you're a teenager, you have to behave in this certain way. I think individuals behave in different ways, regardless of their age, and it's really unfair to pigeonhole an entire group of people based on stereotypes.
I think Kenzie worked out for her age group because I mean, if she's within that mindset of wanting to work for the company and everything else, it would make more sense that she would seem older than, because she's supposed to be what, 16, 17?
17, yeah.
17 years old. So, you know, she would be more geared toward being older because, you know, her mom lets her take over the helm and she has responsibilities. Yeah. So she's been in that, you know, that mindset for years now, because this isn't just like, oh, she was just dropped into this situation. She's been, you know, part of the company for quite some time. So it just it makes sense.
I also think Kenzie's not quite as mature as she thinks she is, especially at the beginning of the book. Like, she grows up a lot throughout the book. But I think at the beginning, again, she's kind of like me, where, you know, when I was 16, 17, I thought I was like, just, you know, give me the keys to a house and I can take care of this. And then she finds out that actually a lot of her views are really shaped by other people. And I mean, that's definitely not a sign of maturity. But.
And she's constantly talking about her comics and, you know, and breaking down because, of course, you know, her parents and everything else. So I think Mackenzie was very well-rounded and really did seem her age throughout the series. I think those people need to reread it. Reread it again because it works. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, guys. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, everybody, so much for watching and for reading, of course. Thank you.
And I cannot wait to see what comes out next. I need more.
You. Yes.
And I need that short story that you wrote. I need to know what happens.
I'll try to put it out. Yeah.
I think that's the bad thing, because you get so you know, wrapped up in these characters' worlds, and then the books end, and then you don't have any more. And it's like, I need an update. I need an update. Give me an update. How's everybody doing? You know, is everybody okay? Everybody's good. So hard. All right. Thank you so much again for coming on.
Thank you too.
Bye. Guys, we have one more show this week. I don't remember if it's on the 30th or the 31st. I do not have my schedule with me. And then we will be back in September. Of course, you can always check out all of the authors that are coming on site at crossreviews.com. In the upper right-hand corner, it'll say author chat, and it will just list all of the authors. And I will catch you guys later.